Looks like we're live. Looks like we're live on both platforms. And I like it. And I'm feeling pretty good. And I'm feeling pretty good today indeed. And part of that reason that I'm feeling pretty good today is because I know that I'm in charge. Hey, Marcus, I know that I'm in charge of my life, my feelings, my outcomes. And that's a damn good feeling. And it's a damn good feeling because I know what the opposite of that feeling is. And I know it very intimately. In other words, I know what it feels like to think, feel, and believe that I'm helpless against the powers outside of me, the world at large, life. I know what that shit feels like, man. And it's such a convincing illusion. It is so convincing. It feels so real when you think that the world sort of has power over you. When you think that that your results are in the hands of other people, other circumstances, other situations, and then some of us want to create changes in our lives. We want to become better people, new people, different people, etc. And so we set off down this path of what you might call personal transformation, personal growth, self-improvement, whatever you want to call it, right? And then we discover it's this huge industry. It's this multi-billion-dollar a year industry. And within that industry are people who want to sell you all manner of fixes for your problem, right? They want to sell you things. And so what do? They position your problems as problems that they have the solution for, as opposed to problems that you have the solution for. Now, this is a very slippery slope indeed. And here's why. Because there is some truth to that. I think I'm going to do one of my famous really bad line drawings today and illustrate to you, if I succeed in illustrating this to you, kind of how it works. Let's see. We'll go with deep purple today. Hey, Joe. So here's the thing. I'm going to use me as an example. I'm going to share a little bit of my backstory with you, a little bit of my own journey, and let you know that I came from a very, very challenging childhood, very challenging origin story, a very challenging place. I was born into a cult. I was brainwashed from birth. And the dominant impression of all of the different things that I was taught that were counterintuitive to my survival, the dominant impression of all those different things was, don't bother trying to do anything because we're really just waiting for we're waiting for the revolution to happen. So just kick back and take it easy until the revolution happens. Well, the revolution isn't ever going to happen in the way that I was sort of brought up to believe it would. So that was one of the things. One of the other big themes was that the people who didn't think like us, that we were better than them, that we wanted nothing to do with them, and that they weren't our people, right? But the problem is, this was the rest of the world pretty much. And so I was taught to believe that only this small group of 60 or so people were right out of all the billions on the planet, and that we were waiting for everybody else to figure out how right we were and how smart we were, and that we had all the answers. And they believed this shit. They believed that at some point, the whole world would come knocking on our door asking us to teach them what we knew. I mean, I suppose probably a lot of cults feel that way. But here's what that left me with. That left me with um, some beliefs and feelings and things hardwired into my nervous system that made it really hard for me to make friends, have relationships, interact, to work, because even though I was told that we don't work and we reject work, I had to go start working when I was 14. So that really fucked me up a little bit. Anyhow, so I know a little something about feeling like you can't affect change on yourself or on the world. I know a little something about feeling like it's hopeless, like the powers outside of you are too big. I know a little something about abdicating control like that without ever realizing that that's what you've been doing. Make sense? Are you following that? So I know what these things feel like. And so when I see people talking about wanting to change, trying to make change, and missing these key pieces I'm going to share with you, these key pieces about it's all about taking radical accountability for your life, even the stuff that happened to you that you could never have done anything about. Things that happen when you're little, things that happen like, I was jumped quite a few times. I know what it's like in the most immediate physical sense to not be able to affect my will on the world outside of me, right? In other words, I can't outfight 2, 3, 4 people. No matter how hard I try, I can't fight my way out of 4 people standing around me or 5 people standing around me. I cannot enforce my will upon my surroundings in that moment. I know what that shit feels like. I know what it feels like to be beat the fuck down by multiple people at once. So I get it. I get it when we're talking about trying to affect real, deep, powerful change, but missing the piece about how you have to take responsibility for everything, or else the change will never occur. And I see so many people get stuck here, and they cite things like, well, what about rape victims? What about, people that were abused as kids? What about, and they cite all these things that are instances of where a single person was overpowered by life, by the other people, by their surroundings. And that happens. It does happen. But there's a difference between that happening to you and you choosing to stay in the mentality of being victimized by it. See, in the moment it happens, you are in fact victimized. You are being a victim in that moment. And sometimes you can just be overpowered. However, staying in that feeling that you were a victim is what is called victimization. So there's being victimized, being made a victim in a moment, and then there's victimization, which is, it could mean a couple of things. It could mean the act of it happening, but it also means when you stay in that, right? When you don't move through it and you don't own it. And here's how you own it, by the way. It's a simple question, simple but not easy. You have to look at those moments objectively and say, what do I choose to learn from this? What can I take from this experience that will make me a better person? Most people don't want to go through that questioning because that questioning is deeply uncomfortable. It is re-scripting your nervous system at a profoundly deep level. Does that make sense? I got to wonder, does that make sense to you? Do you get that? Do you get how we can't stay in that mentality and ever hope to have personal change results? And if we want what we say we want in life, we have to have radical accountability. And radical accountability means choosing with your sovereignty, with your absolute power over your point of view, choosing to say, I need to look at this, even though it hurts, even though it's painful, and see what positive I can bring from it. There's someone in my Facebook friends who was in sex slavery. That's about as not having power over your surroundings as it gets. Well, now she has healed herself completely because of the choices of thinking that she made, and she now teaches like orgasmic tantra. I don't know about you, but that makes me very happy because let's face it, when I think of somebody who was a victim of sex slavery, I think of somebody who I imagine is always going to struggle with sex and intimacy again for the rest of their lives. So to see this woman totally own her power, totally own her own sexuality, teach other people about sexuality after having gone through that, to me is 100% proof that it is not what happens to us, but what we make of it that is important, right? It's not what happens to me that's important. It's what I make of it. It's how I frame the experience and whether or not I can extract value from it that improves me as a human moving forward in my life. So now I want to talk a little bit about what that takes to do that, to actually pull that off. What does that take? Here's where I think a lot of people miss it. There are a lot of people who are pursuing like an understanding of what it takes to shift your perspective like that. And what I think that most entrepreneurs don't talk about, maybe they do a little bit, most spiritual teachers don't talk about, most new age gurus certainly don't talk about, the woo-woo crystals and hugs group. I don't hear people talking about this in a direct sense. Sometimes, here it is, by the way, here's the big reveal. Sometimes moving forward into transformation, change, spiritual growth, moving forward into these things is not always something that feels spiritual. It does not feel like this spiritual growth process. Sometimes it's blunt, it's ugly, and it is fueled and driven entirely by force of will. Sometimes it's blunt, it's ugly, and it is fueled entirely by force of will. Sometimes your growth, your change, your evolution is a matter of determination and getting back up and putting one foot defiantly in front of the other in the face of what seems like overwhelming, circumstantial, emotional, and spiritual odds. Sometimes it means just getting your ass back up and getting back into the mix. Can you dig that? Does that make sense to you? Tell me you're feeling this, because this is so important. Even in our quest to learn how to take accountability for everything, we abdicate accountability to teachers. Think about that. Ugh. Even in our quest to become these autonomous creators, these people who put our will out into the world and shape our realities according to our will, even in our quest to become those people, we tend to abdicate responsibility to our teachers. And I'm here to tell you that some parts of your journey are going to be bloody knuckle, exhausted, feeling beat, and still taking another step forward. That's just how it is. Sometimes it is not pretty. Sometimes it doesn't feel spiritual at all. Sometimes it is just raw, unvarnished, untempered commitment to push forward, right? Sometimes it's just commitment to push forward. Hey, Alice. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Kathy. Hey, John. Good to see you guys. Let me know if this is striking a chord for you guys, because I will tell you, there's something I know a little something about. It's going from what our society would consider totally fucked to successful. I know what it feels like to go from criminal, outlaw, homeless, drug addict, cult survivor, right, to successful. to someone who has changed so much that when I tell people about my history, you know what they say? They say, I can't even imagine that. Never understanding that that's the best compliment they could give me. They look at me and they go, I can't even see you like that. Well, that's good. That means the change has been profound. And I will tell you, glad it's striking a chord for you, Lisa. Yeah, I imagine this would fit with you really well. Having heard a little bit of your story, I imagine that you'd really connect to this message. I will tell you that self-reflection, and I mean hardcore self-reflection, like not mamby-pamby story-based self-reflection, but really looking at my own shit deeply. That and having developed, because I didn't always have it, having developed in myself the resolve to keep pushing forward when things got hard. The two biggest contributors to my ability to change so much that people who I know today can't even see me as the person I was. You understand? Are you getting this? Are you getting this? Hey, Jacob. Jacob, a little bit of what I'm talking about here was inspired by our exchange earlier, and our discussion that is sort of still ongoing. And so here it is, stated again. Jacob, I don't know if you know me. By the way, for you guys on YouTube, Jacob is on Facebook. As always, I'm broadcasting on 2 platforms. And so I look over here to talk to the Facebook people because I cannot see comments on YouTube. So Jacob and I were talking about when people relapse in recovery and how there seems to be a catch-22 in the recovery literature that seems to imply that if you relapse, that automatically means that you weren't following the program right, because they claim that nobody who follows the program right will ever relapse. And that is a twisty little piece of thinking. Yeah, glad you're here, Jacob. And what I was suggesting to Jacob was that sometimes in the process of recovery, I'm 23 years clean and sober now. Sometimes it might be 24. Is that crazy? I lose count. Is that great? It's like being a guy who's sober isn't even a part of my reality anymore. I'm just sober. You know what I mean? But anyway, one of the best things I ever learned in recovery was the simple, blunt truth that if I don't pick up a drink or pick up drugs, I won't get high. So there's all this spiritual stuff to explore and to learn and to integrate and to put into your world and your life, right? There is within recovery and within personal transformation in general. But sometimes, like I'm contending here, sometimes you just have to toughen up, Buttercup. Sometimes you've got to be ready to get your knuckles bloody. That's it. There's not always a soft, easy, spiritual, intellectual, lofty answer to those hard corners that we can find ourselves in our growth process. Sometimes it's just chipped tooth determination, right? No, not anymore, Jacob. Not anymore, brother. You're right. Yeah. I don't live in a 12-step program. I don't really, it's not really in my world anymore. You know, no right or wrong, no judging, but it's really not in my world anymore. No, you're right, brother. And so here's what I want you guys to know, though. I've laid out some hard stuff here. I've laid out some hard truths for you. And whether you like them or not, they're true. So let me just put that out there. If you always look to external advice, external teachings to guide you through the hard times, you're going to falter at some of those hard times. You're going to slip. You're going to slide. In the parlance of recovery, you're going to relapse, right? Because sometimes what it takes is just pit bull determination. And then you can move on to those periods where you can incorporate the teachings and soak up the lessons and the education and the spiritual tools. And those things are huge. They've had a big impact in my life. But sometimes they just weren't there for me. And it was just raw dog determination. I want you to understand that. But here's the good news. I also want you to understand that I'm living proof that you can come to a point where you don't have to experience pain in order to install growth, change, right? Let me check out what Jacob says here. No judgment either, just an observation. I think holding on to that addict or alcoholic label, that you're holding on to those actions. Yeah, man, I think so. I think in a sense, yeah, I can tell you that for me, I roll those labels out more as a badge of honor, because we do get the right to sort of laugh about the hell that we went through. You know what I mean? And so when it's appropriate and when I think it can serve people, I roll that stuff out. I don't know if you're referring to me or just in the general sense, but that's my 2 cents on that. But here's what I want you guys to take away from this is that you could get to a point where you don't have to go through the pain to have the growth anymore. And that's very, very cool. You can just start to, once you do enough of sort of installing new, better beliefs and habits and emotions and stuff into yourself, you can start to do it without having to have big pain as the prompter, right? As the motivator. In the beginning, I think it's got to be big pain. I think it's just not, we just don't get out of our comfort zone without enough discomfort in the comfort zone to push us forward. But hey, Eric, yeah, man, all about habits, brother. But it gets to a point, it can get to a point where your level of autonomy, your level of self-authorship, everybody know what self-authorship means? It means where you can write the story of your reality. Your level of self-authorship gets to a point where you can decide what new things you want to sort of install into your hard drive, set about installing them, and then reap the benefits of them, right? So it can change. It can and does change from just the hardcore kind of like pain drives you to change thing. It can change to a level of self-awareness where it's like with me, for a long time, I thought that I had money stories I had to change. I thought of my relationship to money in terms of my past and all that stuff. And for a long time, it was like that. It was like I had to examine my past to influence my present, to guide my future. Now, that stuff is just not in my reality anymore. Now, I look at it like this. I look at it like, what do I want to have be my reality? Who has those tools? Who can teach me that stuff that maybe I lack that education, that knowledge, and then I'm going to take it, I'm going to install it in me, and it's going to be part of my reality. Boom, done. Shane Carling, Kevin Borges, Eric Swanson. Eric, the future is not now. The future cannot be now. The future is a microsecond from now, all the time. Get on here and confuse these people. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend Eric Swanson. Lisa Simmons says, this is so true. Things that would have sent me into a tailspin last year do not even phase my process now. Girl, that's what I'm talking about. Boom. They didn't even see that coming. The present is now, Eric, by definition. By the way, man, happy birthday. Happy birthday, Eric Swanson. You don't look 50, big dog. You don't look 50. So that's it, guys. That's what I wanted to share with you today. I want you to understand, first of all, that getting through those beginning parts is not always going to be about the next cool spiritual tool, whatever. Sometimes it's just going to be your strength, your force of will, your fortitude, right? And that's as it should be, because you need to develop your strength, your force of will, and your fortitude. But it does get to a point where it's almost like where you had to write a big story before. Now it's kind of like just going to the app store. You know what I mean? It's like going to the app store and going, okay, here's the app I want. I want the app that makes me better at making money than I am now. Okay, I'll take that, download it. Okay, there are the tools. Do I choose to use them or not? And it doesn't have to be a big story anymore. I want the app that is about having healthy relationships that are full of love. Okay, there it is. I'll take it, download it, and I'll use it or not. Right? I want the app that shows me how to install better boundaries in my life. You get what I'm saying? So I want you to know that the whole process, the growth process, iterates itself and gets easier over time. It gets easier as you do it. So the more that you actually grow, and remember in the beginning, and sometimes in the present too, and in the future, it's just going to be force of will. Not always, but sometimes. And you need to know that. You need to stop abdicating your results to external teachers, external details, external influences, and circumstances, and understand sometimes you drag that shit across the finish line, kicking and screaming. Other times, however, it gets easier and easier. And it's just like who you used to be in those old stories don't even matter anymore. You can just move forward from this present moment into the future, choosing what you want to do, to be, to have, and then going and getting it. Yeah. So I don't even have a call to action today. I just want you guys to think of one thing that you want to leave behind you. No, that you have left behind you. Let's state it in this ultimately a positive, affirmative way. Think of one thing you used to struggle with that you're saying today, and you mean it, is no longer a part of your reality. That's your call to action for today, right? What are you leaving behind? What are you done even having be a part of your reality anymore that you used to worry about and work on and try to get rid of? It's over. It ends today. All you have to do is say it, mean it, and act on it. This new thing, this new you. Got it? Hell yeah. All right, you guys, that's it for me today. That's your call to action. And I will see you tomorrow.